What is up,
back, people?
There you go. I jumped the gun too. Go ahead, Kendrick. You lead the show off today.
The 1-2 podcast, fresh off the heels of UFC 261, one of the top cards. If you're a real MMA fan, you were in for a treat Saturday night. I was in the building, saw not one, not two, but 3 Hall of Fame performances. And to keep that theme of Hall of Fame, we got a Hall of Fame commentator in the house. Jon Anik will be joining us. And later on, towards the end of the show, boxing champ Jamel Herring will also be joining us. How was your weekend, James? Man, I'm still tired from this weekend, but it was worth being there. I'm glad I was there. Out of all the cards I covered, this is the top 2.
It had to be. Yeah, it was one of the craziest cards in UFC history. And we'll get into all that with Jon. By the way, really excited to be talking to Jon here today. I'm sure you saw the facial reactions. I mean, it explains it all. One of the best cards in UFC history we saw with everything going on. And you were on the front lines, man. That was really cool. We'll definitely have to hear some stories about how your week went as well. So we got him. We got the boxing star on here as well, Jamel Herring. Really excited about that. My weekend was good. I just watched the fights. I hosted PFL on Friday night. That was cool. Got to do that.
Props to you. Props to you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I had to keep that tight-lipped until everything was A-okay. And then once I was able to do it, it was awesome. Really excited to be working with PFL for the next 5 events. But I'm really excited to welcome on our next guest, Jon Anik. Are we ready to bring him on, Kendrick, or is there anything else you wanted to mention off the top?
Yeah, that's the man. Thank you for coming on, Jon.
It's a pleasure to be with you, men. I think we're all still reeling, whether you were in the building or not. I'm about to do my podcast in about an hour, and I feel like I need a disclaimer off the top for cussing because we do have a lot of younger listeners, and I don't know how I'm going to get through it with clean language, but we'll see how we do here, boys.
No disclaimer here. It's all for adults over here, so you can be raw here in the 1-2 podcast. Jon, does it trip you out the fact that we didn't see about 1, not 2, but 3 future Hall of Famers with Hall of Fame performances? And to quote Rose and Kamaru, they said that was the best version of themselves that we've seen in the octagon. So really, we saw 2 future Hall of Famers at their best, and then Valentina doing Valentina things, but doing the way we never seen her do it, all in the same night.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. You probably need to begin with Kamaru Usman, but Thug Rose Namajunas and her flair for the dramatic in these big moments is absolutely insane. And, I think some of us were saying that Zhang Weili was kind of linear, at least stylistically at times. And, I did think Joanna Jędrzejczyk beat her. I watched it live, of course, and then I watched it back in preparation for this fight. And I guess that's neither here nor there. But
I felt the same way, by the way, Jon. I felt the same way. I felt the same way that Joanna beat her.
But, as I said at the end of the pay-per-view, Trevor effing Whitman, right? And, these are elite coaches. And the reason why Kamaru Usman after the fight said that Jorge Masvidal elevated his game is because of how much respect he has for the preparation for Masvidal and all of these coaches, all of these minds, from American Top Team owner Dan Lambert to Mike Brown on down, right? The investment into trying to secure this win for the team. So Kamaru knew what he was up against, and man, is he special. And Hall of Fame, too. It's funny when people want to suggest that these athletes are not, right, when they're doing historical things. But I guess that is a conversation for another day. But happy to be in the building, happy for all 3 athletes. And, best of luck finding somebody to beat Valentina.
What do you think about the fact that Kamaru used basic boxing, but the way he did it, even I was there when it happened, I didn't realize that he pulled his hand away to set up that over right hand. It's something that's very basic. When you teach somebody to fight, that's what you teach them. He did a very basic move to get a classic result.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you take Masvidal at his word before the fight that suggested on several occasions that he didn't feel like there was any power coming back from Kamaru Usman. I don't know if this was a lack of respect or just, technical superiority. That's why they pay me to read promos, my man. And there are analysts out there, No, I mean, for me, I think it's a combination of things. Risk mitigation is something we talk about on these broadcasts all the time. And Jorge Masvidal hadn't been knocked out really ever. I mean, once early on, right? I was there for the inverted reverse triangle choke in 2009 when I was an early MMA commentator, didn't know what I was looking at. But some of not getting knocked out is good risk management. And obviously he left himself open. There were 2 huge right hands that preceded the fight ending blow. And props to the man. And the funny thing is when Dana White suggests that he's on his way to becoming the GOAT, that's exactly what my eyes tell me is happening right now. So again, we'll see what these other guys can do, but hopefully he wants to continue this sort of 2021. This was 71 days between fights. I'd love to see him spin it around in 4 months or less. We'll see.
Before James jumps in, I just want to add the disclaimer. We don't have that visual of him looking up in the sky that we had at GSP. Yeah, it was early in his career, but it happened. It's never happened to Kamaru for those GSP fans.
Yeah, I mean, Kamaru's really maximizing the showcase right now. And again, there are a lot of eyeballs on these fights, you know, and man, he's really the best thing you can do, obviously, is be active and resonate with people. And he's certainly doing that.
Colby Covington was cage side for the fight, and obviously they shot at him. And Dana White's also said that it appears that Colby will be next. I spoke to Colby yesterday. He says he's got a phone call with Dana Hunter Campbell today. Do you get the sense that's the next fight? Because we heard the comments from Kamaru Usman at the post-fight presser. He's got to show me something, referring to Colby Covington, you know, needing to do a bit more.
Yeah.
My question is, if it's not Colby, do they wait for Diaz and Leon Edwards? Do they wait for Wonderboy and Gilbert Burns? Not Gilbert Burns, obviously, but if Wonderboy wins, that's a fresh matchup. You've got Edwards and Diaz. Do you think Usman's looking more towards those fights at this point based off those comments? Or do you think they will come together and get the Colby rematch based off what Dana said?
I'm so aligned with the boss on this that it makes me want to spin the question around and ask you, James, honestly, because, and it's not promotional hype at all. I mean, it's absolutely the fight. And I sort of have wondered aloud why UFC 245 hadn't been put on that great fight pedestal that Dana sort of put it on during this last fight week. Go back and watch that fight, you know? And some people, I think, probably suggested that I over-exaggerated Covington's shots in that fight, but I would ask you to please watch it back and tell me I did so. You know, incredible fight. Certainly Colby's body of work is number one contender. So yeah, I mean, that's the fight for me. Certainly that doesn't mean there are others that are not worthy, and Leon Edwards is right there with the win over Nate, of course. But Nate might have something to say about that. But no, I think it's got to be Kamaru and Colby. And I think Kamaru, as a champion that wants to fight the best, kind of recognizes that Colby is worthy, and it's a big fight.
Well, and the timetable lines up, right? Colby says he's ready to go. I think all the pay-per-views are booked up, I think, until August. So Colby says he's ready to take that fight in August. It would seem like it would make sense. And I'm glad you brought that up because, John, I was in the building for that fight as well. I couldn't even hear the commentary because I was in the crowd as a media member. But I remember that fight being pretty close going into the fifth round. There's a lot of revisionist history, I think, with a lot of people on that fight because of them not liking Colby. It's the same people who thought that Rafael dos Anjos beat Colby Covington. It's the same sort of thing. And I get that. Look, Colby's not, not the biggest fan for everyone, right? But I think in terms of the actual matchup, Colby so far, what we've seen has been the closest guy to, give Kamaru a good test over the last couple of fights anyways. It's just been dominance from Kamaru since then. My question to you is, do you think the timing will benefit Colby because these other guys have got to fight in a few months and it might take even longer for Kamaru to get back in there? Right.
I mean, therein lies the question. What's Kamaru's timetable? He's going to call the shots. He's certainly put himself in position to do so. You talk about a promotional workhorse, he's carried the torch now for a couple of pay-per-views inside of 71 days. But I will say too about Colby Covington, before Max Holloway did what he did to Calvin Kattar, and you can see the image behind me, the greatest singular performance I had ever seen was Colby Covington against Robbie Lawler, I believe it was, right? The amount of output from this guy. He is the welterweight division's version of Merab Dvalishvili or Ricky Simone, and the welterweight division shouldn't have a version of one of those guys. The way he can combine takedown output and striking output, Colby's one of the greatest fighters I've ever seen, and I really hope he gets the opportunity.
I asked Kamaru this. I know you paid this in the press conferences. Do you think if he laps the field that he needs that super fight to put himself in the GOAT conversation for real at 185?
No, not when you're 55 or 70 and you're doing what you're doing. No, and especially when you have a friend who's the champion of division above you. Obviously, if that belt changes hands, maybe that's a different conversation. But it's sort of a similar thing with Valentina, even though she has the 2 fights with Amanda. Valentina could easily get on the mic and say, hey, I beat her in 2017. Y'all call her the GOAT, But Valentina's making money defending titles on big pay-per-views, and, she's smaller than Amanda. So there's a lot of different factors at play. And again, I think the closest fight on paper, and I love Juliana Pena. I think she's a live underdog, but the closest fight other than that on paper for me is Amanda Valentina. So hopefully one day we do see that, but I think there's some similarities to be drawn from those two situations.
You can tell Valentina wants to fight, but she doesn't want to come out and say it. But because at 125, most of those kicks, like I don't know if you remember right before the pandemic, we were in Houston. Asked Caitlin Shahagan how'd it feel to fight somebody that you need your personal best just to compete with her, and she looked at me like I was crazy. And we saw what happened Saturday night. Tap. Well, that Amanda Nunes, so all the people she knocked out, Ronda, Misha, Cyborg, and she's been in the cage with her twice and has not even stunned her, Valentina. And you're 125, you can't even knock her out, and her skills are better than you. How do you deal with that?
Well, I will say, and again, it's not that easy for Valentina to always get down to 125 pounds, to always put in these full training camps for championship fights. But, I don't know. I mean, I think there are a lot of layers to that matchup, and Amanda is just a much different version of the fighter that fought in 2017. She's so strategic and coachable now, and looking for mistakes on such a high level. It's such a high level fight, those two. But the 2022 or 2023 bantamweight version of Amanda Nunes, in theory, would be far superior to the 2017 version.
I agree with that. I actually thought Valentina won that second fight. Just saying. I know they're different fighters, but I am curious. I am curious to see if that trilogy fight happens. I know she lost twice, but just we want to see a competitive fight. And I think if Valentina moves up, they sort of have the same problem, right? In both divisions, where, I mean, no offense to Pena, like you said, live dog, but in general, I think both need a challenge. And again, we've got Lauren Murphy and Joanne Calderwood coming up here. I assume the winner would probably fight Valentina if they need someone to fight. But that's the fight, right? The trilogy. I think a lot of people want to see it.
Yeah, and hey, Lauren Murphy and JoJo Calderwood are fresh challengers, right? Yeah. And skilled fresh challengers, and would be motivated in shape fresh challengers. And I wouldn't want to put anything past anyone. And again, Lauren Murphy is going to champion for that opportunity because, maybe she'll take a bunch of risks and maybe she'll get lucky, no pun intended, right? And maybe I'm not giving her enough credit. But yeah, I mean, that's the fight, man. And obviously we sit down with Valentina before all of these fights, and inevitably I bring it up. I don't know that she has any appetite to be the greatest of all time. I think she's just happy to be on a Masvidal pay-per-view as a champion, getting points.
And flying planes and traveling and all that stuff too. I'm going to get one more quick one in here before Kendrick gets his next question. Weili Zhang and Rose Namajunas. The narrative I saw going into that fight was that Rose had no chance. She was scared. I saw all this ridiculous stuff. I know, John, trust me, I was shocked too. I picked Rose actually on Saturday. I felt like she was going to do enough to get it done. I felt like she was totally being counted out for a variety of reasons outside the cage. You don't need to get into those. But with Rose winning, a lot of people are wondering what's next. I think Joanna Jędrzejczyk has no argument at this point. She's lost twice to her. I don't think that's happening. There is that pivotal fight coming up between Jan and Carla Esparza. I wonder if that's a fight that would be interesting, especially with the fact that Esparza has a win over Rose from a couple of years ago. Do you think that's an option for Rose next in terms of her next opponent? Because I don't see a lot of people talking about what's next for Rose. Yeah,
you put it well. It's a good question. I think if Carla Esparza beats Yan Xiaonan, she would be very deserving of a championship opportunity given the backdrop of their history, for sure. I think Zhang Weili, given the 21 fight winning streak that just ended, would be worthy of a rematch. I think most champions in theory would be worthy of a rematch at some point. But Joanna Jędrzejczyk's an interesting case, my man, right? Because that forehead in that fight, I understand, right? And there was a lot of two-way damage, and I know it didn't go her way, and I know she has the 2 head-to-head losses. And again, I did not think that the second fight with Rose was super competitive, but I thought she beat Zhang Weili. And then think about how history changes, So you're right. I do think they will wait to see what happens with Carla Esparza and Yan Xiaonan, but if you take Dana White at his word at the post-fight press conference, he seems pretty bullish on a rematch. So, certainly plenty of options at 115 pounds, as you know.
John, I know you take this history of sport very seriously. Do you think it's crazy that we legitimately could have seen the best men's welterweight fighter, the best female flyweight fighter, and the best female strawweight fighter all fight on Saturday night? Especially if Rose fights Carla and beats her, she's going to be 3 champions, knocked out 2 of them. We've already talked about Kamaru, and so even a question with Valentina. We all saw them on the same card.
Right. I mean, can you imagine if Kamaru Usman and Georges St. Pierre were of the same era? Because again, any anti-GSP conversation, at least right now, is going to fall on a lot of deaf ears, right? But if Kamaru Usman supplants Anderson Silva and wins 17 straight fights, I don't even know how you're going to not give him whatever credit he's looking for in whatever weight class or pound for pound conversation. Strawweight is very interesting because Joanna's reign singularly is as special as almost anything Amanda's done. And you know what I mean? Like, it was so special at the time and so unbelievable to watch unfold. But how do you argue with Rose, right? Hardest thing to do in sports, lose a title as a pro sports team or in an individual sport, lose it, come back and get it. So, and then the 2 head-to-head wins, of course. So, yeah, I mean, it's a 2-headed race at 115 pounds, at least right now. But it's obviously a conversation that will continue. You know, Joanna is I think picking fights pretty particularly right now, as you boys know. So we'll see.
And speaking of Joanna, do you think her? The reason I thought Rose was going to win is because of that hellacious fight her and Wei Lee had. I don't think we'll ever see the same version of them. Just like Stipe and DC. DC got out right ahead. We'll never see the same version of Stipe. Prime example, you saw what happened to him. I don't think we'll ever see the same, especially now the Wei Lee got knocked out. After that brutal match, you're never the same. I don't think we'll see the same out of either one of those two ladies.
I think you're on to something with Zhang Wei Li, but let us not take any credit away from Francis Ngannou, my brother. I mean, that dude, I'll say no more on that. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on. I don't even know what we were talking about. You stopped me at Francis, you know.
I got a story for you.
Seabag's going to go back in there and beat some dudes, man. You know, Francis is literally the most special thing, that I've seen. Like, what the potential of what he can do if he really has an appetite to stick around is incredible.
I got a story for a Francis story. At the post-fight, he's a Kamaru's corner, so the whole team comes in and wants him, Ali, his family. And I asked my questions to Kamaru. I slide over to him. I hadn't seen him in a while. He's like, "How you doing?" Congratulations, champ. And I said, when you come back from your trip, because he's going to Africa for a couple months, I said, "Can I do something with you? How do you know my treble pens?" And then I have to show him that Eric Nixon was on our show last week. I have to show him Eric came up. Oh, it's like you can tell the system and he's like, "How does this man know my treble blades?"
Well, I said it on pay-per-view, so I think the world knows.
Yeah, there you go. John, I do commentary on the regional scene. I don't know if you know this. I've done 5 events so far. It's a tough job. I mean, that's something I never thought I'd get into. It was just something that I was lucky enough to get an opportunity. We did an event, first Canadian event on the regional scene since the pandemic started. We did it a couple of weeks ago. Elias Theodore was in the main event. But that's not what I'm trying to get to here. We had 2 injuries back to back on that card. I don't think that's ever happened in a UFC card, that brutal type of injuries with Jimmy Crute and then Chris Weidman. How did you compose yourself during that moment? Because I can watch blood, no problem. I don't know what it is, but anything breaks, I get a little squeamish. How did you get through that?
I didn't at first. I mean, we're actually trying out like a new electronic system for promos, and I missed a promo cue, and I really try to not let that happen. So if you know me, you know Ray Longo is a dear friend and has been on my podcast since episode 1 every week over 6 years. So, it was just hard. I circumstantially spent a lot of time with Chris during fight week and consider him a friend. So seeing any athlete go through that, but that was just brutal. And Jimmy Crute, it's like he's on the cusp of a world title potentially in my eyes in terms of what I think he can do. That dude's a monster. So to see him sustain an injury like that, I mean, he's literally Hill Karate Kid, just will fight on one leg. I absolutely love that man. So, yeah, I mean, this is the most memorable event in UFC history for me, right? And maybe you can say there's a recency bias there. But, James, I think when you sort of parlay these 2 injuries and I mean, I got people texting me like, "I'm turning this off, man. Like, I can't watch anymore." And then they would go on to miss. Even if you had just 2 throwaway decisions of the first 2 for those last 3 fights, you're talking about one of the greatest pay-per-views in UFC history, so just a lot to digest. I'm still reeling, I think we all are. It's just crazy, man.
That was the first time I saw Crute in person. He's legit. He took down Anthony Smith twice. Just imagine if he wouldn't have got hurt.
He's built like a backyard shed, like Alir Latifi, but not so much. So, and just has all the skills in the world. But I do think, Joe Rogan says it all the time, right? Like crazy shit happens in fights. And that's why you're betting a number and not a fighter, right? That's why you're betting Anthony Smith plus 170 because, all right, well, Smith's in a really good place for this fight, mentally, physically, emotionally, can finally call himself a Factory X fighter. He's ready to go. Jimmy Crute's a monster, right? But you're betting plus 170 and anything can happen in a fight and an injury and you end up winning that, But I feel awful for Weidman. I feel bad for Uriah Hall, but for Uriah Hall, you spin him forward with a 4-fight winning streak. You give him that top 5 fight at 185 pounds. You give him a main event. And you see if he can become a number 1 contender. He's earned that opportunity as far as I'm concerned. So, you got to lean into the good. Weidman, I'm sure you guys saw, he said on his hospital video through the morphine, that he was even trying to just lean into the positive while he was in pain on the ground, thinking about how he was going to do good with this, whether it's documenting his recovery or otherwise. So just got to lean into the positive that comes out of that, and hopefully it'll be that for both guys. I have no doubt Weidman will fight again. No doubt in my mind.
Interesting. Okay.
No doubt in my mind. If he has an appetite to do so, which I'm sure he will, make one more walk at Madison Square Garden, and the place will just go bananas. But no, I mean, the tricky thing is that he was ready to become a world champion again. That's his mindset going in there. That's why he threw that kick so fucking hard. And Longo said he was kicking so goddamn hard in the back that one of their legs was going to break. Maybe not on the first kick, but there's a lot of talk. I don't know if you guys on your show talk about just like maybe pre-fight x-rays to try to see if this was just an eventuality that because again, you have a lot of shin pads and you're protecting that part, and then these fights begin, and one unbelievable.
Yeah, I'd like to get a doctor to sort of figure out, what, like if there is anything, like you said beforehand, I don't really know the science behind it. We're not doctors, clearly, but
James, and like if you're pushing on Weidman's shin bone before the fight, and he's like, it's like he's fighting, so
it wouldn't make a difference. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I'll rate this in before James asks. What about Randy Brown? Nobody's talking about his performance. Is that the first shot? Is that the first time somebody's done that in a UFC fight?
As far as Joe Rogan and I can remember, but rarely do we sort of have a guy come into a fighter meeting where we're like, oh shit, like he's gonna go win that fight, almost whoever he's fighting. It happened at UFC 253, Jan Blachowicz against Israel Adesanya. Blachowicz walks into the fighter meeting, we go through it, and it's like, oh my gosh, man. Like, good place doesn't even begin to describe it in terms of how ready to go he was. And same thing here with Randy Rude Boy Brown. So huge win, huge frame at 70. And excited to see them move him up too. He's earned it. A lot of UFC experience. I think 11 UFC fights now, won 7 of them, if I'm not mistaken. So good on Randy Brown.
Was that the type of win for Brown that sort of reminds the division, hey, I'm here. I'm not just that looking for a fight guy that people thought, because that's what I felt. I thought it was a statement win for him to do that to Oliveira so early in the fight.
I think that's the perfect context. Absolutely.
That's great. And then sort of, looking ahead here, we had the crowd back. I mean, do you think this card would have been anything close to what it was? I mean, the results would probably still be the same, but to have the crowd there, it's one of those things from home. I know you guys were there in the arena, but it was one of those things I didn't notice until the crowd was back. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what we missed out on. Like, how much did that enhance this card, in your opinion, of being one of the best cards of all time, having the crowd back there?
So when Ariane Carnelosi and Liang Na came out, it sounded like a main event, right? I mean, I think strategically, if they could do it over, they would have put like a sneaky, really big fight first, right? Because they would have known how many people were going to be in there. But it was so special. And I think to dismiss it as a factor in terms of some of the performances would be very ignorant, especially if I think back to our fighter meetings when to a man, to a woman, they were just saying, I can't wait. And I think we got into this a little bit on the broadcast. I don't know but if you have a bad warm up, right? And guys and girls have bad warm ups, and then you walk out like at the Bell Center, right? Like there, you're up. There goes your bad warm up. The crowd gives you a good warm up. Honestly, like that's the type of effect it can have. So in the apex, for a guy like Dominic Cruz, after all that time away, walking out into a regional show with less people than that, forget it. So I don't want to overstate it as a factor, because as an athlete, a professional athlete, you should be able to adapt to the cage size or any other factor. But I think to dismiss it as a factor would be pretty ignorant.
I agree with you 100%, John. Even the walkouts, like I've never seen Anthony Smith's walkout, because the return of the Mac, I would say it's one of the top 10. And then Chris Weidman's is top 5. So just to see them in person, and I seen Chris when he was on top of the world champion, it still had that feel. And that was at MSG when he lost to Yoel. But it was still that magical, that comeback fight. And then also too, one thing that to me people are not talking about as much is, as good as this card was, and I know we got the recent bias, I still give 217 the edge, because we had 3 champions get their titles. It's never happened. That's the only night in UFC history.
Well, but again, what adjective did I use? I don't know. Memorable, right? Most memorable, right? I mean, the circumstances surrounding
it was an MSG too.
Leg injury. Yeah, no, I mean, that night was obviously very special. Very, very special. And people would always ask, oh, what's the moment that you hearken back to most? And it was Rose's knockout of Joanna. But gosh, man, I mean, you guys, those injuries like that, you know, because that peroneal nerve or whatever it's called, that injury, and maybe it was a knee injury, but that type of injury is sort of a hard thing in and of itself to watch. And then you have the most gruesome live leg injury that I think I've seen. And it put you in a place where, you know, maybe the only thing that could get you to sleep might have been what happened after the fact, that we had these 3 unbelievable finishes that just sort of resonated with the world. Thank God, you know, because I think we were all in a bad place, you know, just was trying to get, you know, spin our heads around. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're just talking about mixed martial arts, 217 is hard to mess with.
Just looking ahead here quickly, we've got a big fight this weekend that's kind of flown under the radar because we've had, you know, the hangover Askren Paul and the hangover UFC 261 as well. But we've got a great fight on Saturday with Dominic Reyes and Yuri Prochazka. John, you're a betting guy like me. I always follow the odds. Dominic Reyes as an underdog is very interesting to me here because I know his last 2 fights have not gone the way he's wanted. He's lost his last 2 fights. The John Jones fight's up for debate, but the Yuri Prochazka, the Jan Blachowicz fight clearly was finished in that one. But am I missing something here? This is a guy that, you know, people thought beat John Jones and he's coming off a loss. Now he's an underdog against Yuri, who, don't get me wrong, very talented, but am I missing something here? Am I out to lunch, John?
No, I mean, I understand how you're sort of approaching it. For me, it's sort of interesting because sometimes I have this great lens into where all these athletes are, and then other times I don't, right? I do about 25, 26 of the 40 shows that we do. So this week I sit to you as a guy who follows both those guys on Instagram, but I don't have that lens this week as to where they are. So you're asking me just based upon the skills and where I think they are, you know, Prochazka and Reyes are 2 guys that both could be champion, right? Do I think Prochazka deserves the distinction as the favorite? Probably, right? He's only getting it because they think maybe that he's the better fighter, because experience, you know, was told to me recently by a young man, you know, it's the currency in combat sports. It's a big deal. And Dominic Reyes has big fight experience and big fight success and huge motivation in theory coming into this fight, you know, but I'd like to sit down across from these men. You know, Prochazka is a very special individual, very unique individual, a very thoughtful, high IQ martial artist and violent with a lot of aspects of his game. So before I looked at the line, I thought Prochazka would be a slight favorite, and that a lot of people would maybe think that Dominic Reyes was worth a little tickle. So I'm excited to sit back and not have to talk and just enjoy it.
Final question for me, John. You gotta give us, what's your insight on Jake Paul and what the hell happened with the DC shit? We want the real shit. We want something that nobody knows. Tell us the whole deal.
You know, I guess my informed speculation is that my dear friend, our producer, Zach Candido, gave Daniel 2 minutes to go handle his business with Jake Paul. And, you know, Daniel is a man who has a lot of pride, and you know, he wanted to clear the air, and I don't blame him. You know, when I got the chance to voice an essay for Daniel Cormier in advance of his retirement fight, you know, it was the ultimate competitor, right? And the first thing I did was look up the definition of the word compete. You know, he truly is the ultimate competitor. He played golf 4 times last week. I mean, the dude is out of his skull, you know, in terms of trying to improve and beat you, you know, like I need to start practicing so I don't lose to this goddamn guy, you know? So I can understand why, you know, he doesn't want Jake Paul sort of disgracing his name. I'm not saying that Jake is doing that per se, but I think that verb would be one that Daniel would probably say was safe to use. You know, I guess I'm more interested in Jake Paul, the boxer, right? To see what he can do against a boxer, even Kendall Gill, right? You know, somebody who is a boxing aficionado, somebody who is a pro boxer. So I would have an appetite for that, or a mixed martial artist who is a striker. You know, I think that would be fun too. So I'm not like anti-Jake Paul. I'm anti-Jake Paul fighting arguably one of the worst 5 strikers in UFC history, with all due respect. I mean, go sit down after this exercise if you're listening or watching and write down the 5 worst strikers, man or woman, in UFC history, you know? I mean, or just do the men if you want. You know, I say that with all due respect to Ben Askren, who literally is a better collegiate wrestler than you even think, you know? Like, he's even better than that. Historically, in America, one of the greatest of all time. But what did people think was going to happen in there? So to me, maybe I'm immature, but I get very frustrated with an exercise like that when the outcome is an eventuality. It's that, you know, there's no suspense.
John, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Absolutely nailed the call on Saturday night. It was a pleasure getting to watch you in there, do your thing. We know you got the Anik and Florian podcast. What else you got coming up in the next couple of weeks in terms of assignment duties?
Well, KJ, it's good to see you. James, congrats on the new opportunities that you got going on. I did not know that. That's great. So yeah, Anik and Florian podcast, we're doing it Monday night because Ken Flo's traveling. So hopefully we have an hour with Longo tonight because he wants to obviously talk about the card, but he's reeling, obviously. I mean, he thought, again, as I sort of stated earlier, that Weidman was ready to go and become champ again. So he's having a tough time. So yeah, that's about it. Just excited to have the week off. And then obviously we got 2 big shows coming up with Sandhagen Dillashaw and UFC 262. So appreciate everybody for the support of the broadcast. I don't know why there are cameras on us, but thanks everybody for your support of all that stuff. And thank you guys for having me. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Before you go, can you do a liner for us? Just identify yourself and say you're watching and listening to Kendrick and James on the 1-2 podcast.
The 1-2 podcast. All right. See, because I want to get this right. Like they asked me to do instant analysis for like Sports Center or something. They give you 45 seconds. How many takes you going to make the producer sit there for? Hey, it's Jon Anik, lead play-by-play. See, we got second take.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Jon Anik. You were listening to the 1-2 podcast with Kendrick and James.
Love it. There you go. Great
work.
You're a pro.
No too high energy. So thank you, boys.
Thank you, John.
Thank you,
thanks for.
I'll be in touch, brother.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. And there you have it. There is Jon Anik, lead commentator for the UFC, joining us here. Great breakdowns of all the fights.
Dropping gems. Everything he said was spot on. Like if I didn't watch nothing on 261, he summed it up. Being in the arena from like I said, these fools were getting crunk off the prelims, bro.
Yeah, no, I know.
To the walkouts, which I never pay attention to. But like the Chris Weidman and Anthony Smith, just hearing the music and people getting into it, it's like, man, we ain't got into the cage. We were just walking out and people were going crazy.
Our great producer tells us we got a bit of time before Phil's our producer Phil has got our next guest coming on here shortly. We will introduce him here in a second. I'll get you to lead him on here, Kendrick. But before we do that, I got one quick thing. I think Kamaru Usman has the potential to be the GOAT for sure, but I think he's got to get a few more title defenses before we put him in
most definitely. Most
as long as we're on the same page there. I just wanted to clarify.
But at 170,
my man GSP's got something to say.
At 170 though, he's walking up the tree though.
At
170, he's close. Before it's like John Jones and the cemetery territory, we need some more work. But for 170, if he beats Kobe, if he would have knocked Kobe out, that'd be 2 stoppages of Kobe, Jorge, and Gilbert Burns. That's the best of his era. What else did he need to do?
Well, okay, just back one thing up there. Jorge Masvidal is not the best in that division. Let's be real here.
No, I'm saying his era.
Yeah, I agree. The finishes. Yeah, I just got to give you a hard time, Kendrick. If I let
other
you
than Leon Edwards, who else would he need to fight? I think he's fighting everybody other than Leon Edwards, right?
Wonder Boy's never fought him.
Oh yeah,
Wonder
Boy's tricky. Yeah, I forgot about Wonder Boy.
Do you want to bring in our next guest, Kendrick? Why don't you introduce him?
It's the band right here. The band, aka host of the Jamel Herring show. Junior lightweight champion of the world, Jamel Herring.
Look at that intro.
Hi. How you doing, brother?
Everything's good.
Did I nail the intro?
You nailed it.
Are you still on that Carl Frampton high coming up? This man went across the pond, James.
Oh, I remember.
Was a major underdog, and that just shocked the world. Ended it Usman style before Usman did it.
No, for me, like it was a good victory, but like I'm still hungry for more. I'm actually looking forward to the next now.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was it like though? Just the reception. I mean, everyone was talking about that fight after it happened. Was that something you anticipated, getting a win like that you would get that much recognition?
I just knew I had to make a statement because you guys seen all the criticism I went through after the Kendall situation, whatever. So I like my whole motivation was actually going back to seeing all the criticism I had taken upon during the build up towards the Frampton fight. And even you had Frampton side thinking that I was going to come in the same way I did against Jonathan O'Kendall, when reality is that I was fighting COVID-19 around the O'Kendall camp. So I wasn't at my best in terms of health wise, but I didn't let it bother me. And at the end of the day, I appreciated all the love and support I got after the Frampton win. So, I can't complain.
That's about you, the disrespect, Jamel. You won 7 fights in a row, hadn't lost in almost 5 years, and people are like you just some fluke champion. Why don't they give you your flowers, man? All you do is keep winning.
I mean, like I said, I have to give credit to my team because after my last defeat, I had to make a change in my corner. Brian Bomack, Red Spikes, Esau Diego, Jimmy Belt, Terrence Crawford. Also, I have brought in a nutritionist from Perfecting Athletes, Paulina and Dara. So, all those individuals play a huge role into where I'm at now. But, man, for me, it doesn't really bother me. I look at, guys I looked up to coming up, like Winky Wright. Winky Wright didn't get his, he didn't get his just due until after he fought Shane. And then he had to basically give Shane a rematch to prove that, he was legit. And so on, and he was still striving for those big fights, even when he fought
Trinidad.
Phoenix Trinidad, he practiced him out the frame, but during the build, they thought that Trinidad had a huge chance of beating Winky Wright. So I mean, it's not like I'm not the first guy who's gone through that, and I won't be the last. But as long as people give me my credit while I'm here, I don't mind how they feel towards the build up towards the big fights.
How much to being around a future Hall of Fame trainer in Bomack and a future Hall of Fame boxer in Terrence, pound for pound, great, does that make you be the man you are? Because since you got with them, you took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I mean, with those two individuals alone, especially Bud, he makes you step your game up to a whole different level. Like, Bud was with me during training camp. You guys seen it. He was on sparring with me a few times during that training camp as well, mainly to push me because we know he's a bigger guy, but if you look at how the Frampton fight played out, him being there was a huge role because his job was to push me when I got under pressure, when the things got heated up in there. And remember, in the Frampton fight, I had got cut, and what did he do? He came at me with a lot of pressure and tried to turn it up. But I stayed cool and calm in there, and I picked him off and actually set up, for him actually press me action. And he actually created an opening for me to land that left hook to put him down. That left uppercut, I mean.
You mentioned linking up with Bud Crawford. You mentioned Perfecting Athletes. That piqued my interest because they work with a lot of MMA fighters. I'm an MMA guy, Jamel, so that piqued my interest. I know they work with Calvin Cater. How long have you been working with them? Because they're one of the best out there for when it comes to weight management and all that.
I've been working with them since the beginning of 2018. So we've been rolling ever since I joined with Bud and Bomack. That's how long I've been working with them. Because remember, in 2017 I was at lightweight, and then when I got with Bomack and them, they wanted me to, go down and see if I could go down to 130. And I'm thinking, I look at them like, I don't think I can do it. Yeah. And when they brought in Perfected Athletes, and I was looking at them crazy for a while. It was like, no, you can actually make the weight. And I was like, no, I don't. But I trusted them. I stayed disciplined, and like you guys seen even my last fight, I came in lighter than I did Carl Frampton did, and he's supposed to be the smaller guy. But that just goes to tell you how great their work and their program is.
And the meals are good. I talked to Calvin Cater. He's having some, what was it, like a banana with toast and honey or something. Like they actually make good meals too. It actually tastes good.
Yeah. Fight week, she always comes to me with a pen and paper and says, "What do you want to eat after for the day of the weigh-in and for fight night?" And I'll come up with stuff, and she'll be like, "Okay, that's fine." And I'm like, "I can eat that." And she's like, "Yeah, I can make it this way," and she'll make it. And like you guys see, I don't go in the fight sluggish. I don't go in there feeling like I have
great.
Stomach aches. Yeah, and I'm just perfectly fine, and I go to work.
Now, as a boxer, what did you think of UFC 261? I'm sure you caught it or caught the highlights. What did you think of that? Because it was a pretty crazy card, especially they have fans back now. What did you think of that?
Oh yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. I was actually excited just to see how crazy the atmosphere was. Like you would never thought we were in a pandemic. Like I was just happy to see fans in the building. Like I mean, people fail to realize how much of a huge role the fans play. Yes, as fighters, once that bell rings, we get tunnel vision, but we still love to acknowledge that crazy atmosphere. So that was great. But my guy from Long Island, man, my guy
Chris Weidman.
My man Chris, man, I felt for him, man. That looked like it did look. That is a serious injury that he took with that ankle. The ankle shot, but I just hope he has a full recovery. And like I said, people don't know. I've known Usman since my time at the OTC Olympic Training Center.
Oh no way! Okay, cool.
That's how I forgot you because you trained with him and Michaela.
Yeah, we all came together under the same program. So I was happy to see him win. I'm happy to see him continuing to do great things. And people say that he's probably one of the best today in the UFC. But he's definitely come a long way, and it's good to see him being a champion, myself being a champion. Guys like Errol Spence as well, who he knows. So because we for the most part, the wrestlers and the boxers, we always click at the Limit Training Center. So that's how far back we go. But it was a good card. It was, like I said, it was good. It was good from start to finish.
You gotta put something out that I would think about. Like, people criticize the Olympic program in boxing and wrestling because y'all not getting these medals, but all y'all became world champions. You got Michaela, Kamaru, Earl. How did that get y'all the foundation? Because it had to do something. Because y'all got these goals around y'all shoulders and belt and your waist.
2012 was rough on us, man. 2012 was rough on us. Like, we actually became like the first men's team not to get any medals. So that was a rough. That's a rough stamp to get placed upon you. But I know for a fact we all had that hunger and ambition. Okay, if we could succeed at the amateur level, we're damn sure gonna succeed at the pro level. And like you pointed out, I mean, even the guys who didn't win a title yet, like, they're still going strong. Like Terrell Goucher, Dominic Brazil. He's fought for the title. He's fought both Wilder and Anthony Joshua. Marlene, she's back in the swing of things. Michaela's, she's doing Clarissa, and you know what I mean. JoJo, Jose Ramirez is in a big fight coming up in less than a month now. That I'm actually looking forward to going to see myself in person. Rashid Warren, Marcus Brown just got back in action last weekend. So yeah, man, the team is still going strong even after all these years later. We're still either top contenders or world champions. So I'm proud of each and every one of those individuals.
You talked about all the greatness that y'all doing. They say you got to challenge yourself there to be great. When we see you go up a weight class with all those sharks at 135, or you continue handling business at 130?
I want to do both. I mean, that's just me. Like, I'm like you guys pointed out, perfecting athletes is great. I feel like I can go up or down. It doesn't really matter to me. Plus, you see right now, I don't put a lot on crazy weight on. Some fighters, they after 2 weeks after they fight, they're like 3-4 pounds. 4 weight classes above their weight. But not for me. I still keep not a strict, but a fairly easy routine to keep up with, even outside of camp. And yeah, I just want to continue fighting other champions and collecting more titles on my end. So whether it's at 130 or 135, I'm okay with either one.
You mentioned Clarissa Shields. She's going to be making her MMA debut for PFL in a few weeks coming up here, I think. What do you make of that? Because one of the interesting things with her is she actually went to train at Jackson Wink, which is the same camp as Holly Holm, who also came from boxing and went over there. I don't think you can pick a better camp to, go into MMA.
Oh, no, not at all. Especially we've seen what Holly did. Holly, her biggest win came over, Ronda Rousey when Ronda was hot. So at that point in time, but I wish Clarissa all the best of luck. I mean, after what I've seen with Chris this weekend, I'm not taking a dive. I'm not taking the chance.
You got that confirmed. There we go.
I'm cool on my ground. With my standing game. But Clarissa, she's going for greatness in all aspects. I applaud that. So I just hope that she finds the same success that she's been finding at the pro game.
Well, it's so interesting too. She's really young. Like, even when Holly entered the MMA space, she was in her 30s. With Clarissa coming in, I think there's so much potential for her to do well. And I love the fact she's with PFL because they're not going to throw her to the wolves if she was in the UFC right now. She's going to get the girl she's fighting has a losing record, but that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to build up the fighters and see where they're at. So I think Clarissa is something we all, I think it's kind of been underrated a little bit. We got to keep an eye on her because I think she's going to do big things in the MMA world. Plus, I think she can still box right now too.
That's what I'm saying. That's the thing also. When Holly went over to MMA, she stayed over there. Well, Clarissa, she's basically jumping back and forth. So it'll be interesting to see how far she can get on the MMA side, and maybe she can match, where she's at on the boxing side. So that'd be a great.
It's gonna be tough.
Yeah,
it's gonna be tough. Don't put that pressure on her, man. She's a 2-time undisputed champion.
She's up for it, so she wouldn't. I know Clarissa. She wouldn't sign up. She wouldn't sign up for anything that she would believe she wouldn't be successful in. So we'll just have to wait and see. But like I say, one fight at a time. Let her get her feet wet, and then we'll just have to go from there.
Since you're one of the top 10 boxers in the world, I got to ask you about a boxer who's not a boxer. Oh. Give us some insight on.
I think we just lost him. He dropped out of the call here. We'll there we go. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you got kicked out or what happened. Don't worry, you answered the question right. We didn't kick you off the show. It's all good. Go ahead, Kendrick.
So I'm gonna talk about a non-boxer. What do you think your take on this whole Jake Paul situation with him getting his 1.3 million buys. Dana White called it bullshit to my face on Saturday. But it's like people keep calling the man a fake fighter, but he's making some real ass money.
I'm not mad at it. Yeah. I mean, like, why should I be angry? I mean, because this is the thing I look at it. Don't be mad at him. Be at the people. If you're gonna be mad at somebody, be at the ones around him, like in terms of like the people buying it and the ones putting on the show. Don't be mad at him for taking the opportunity to not only build his star even brighter, but also make good money in return. So like I don't really get into all that because I look at it like this: if a real fighter, as they say, a real boxer was in that position, they probably do the same thing. I mean, yes, the competition level is not the greatest of course, but what do you expect? I don't expect him to fight Holyfield in his prime, So it's like, hey, if he's going to continue doing what he wants to do, that's on him. But I do see the heat that Dana White though, and that's another fight that's very interesting as of late. But I mean, I'm not mad. I mean, even with his statement, I believe he made yesterday or earlier.
He was
today.
Right in that statement.
Yeah,
actually, it was one of the few times I agree with Jake Paul.
Exactly.
You got to pay the fighter.
I mean, most of the stuff he says is foolishness and is him building the hype. But I wasn't mad at what he said because at the end of the day, fighters, no matter if they're in a ring or an octagon, they put their health on the line to entertain, the public. And you would like to see some of your favorite UFC fighters get paid just as well as maybe the average boxer. You know what I mean? So I'm not mad at it. I mean, if he's out there, if you're a fighter, you can't be mad at him for wanting to make money off the sport you're in, but at the same time, applaud him when he's fighting, when he's he's putting out statements fighting for fighters. So you can't be mad at that. So I'm like, I commend him for that, and I think that kind of ticked Dana off. Well, obviously it did, but it is what it is. But Jake and his brother continue doing what they want to do. It doesn't stop, me from what I'm going to do or what I'm going to achieve. So I have no issues with it.
And I follow with this. This is a once in a billion chance. But if your name somehow came out of his mouth, would you run up on him like Daniel Cormier did Saturday night up in Jacksonville?
Hey,
he run up on him like that?
He a brave dude because he went up in the Lions den and they all DC and everybody was on him. So I'm like, hey, you unless you kind of promote the next fight or create one, I applaud you. But I'm not about to go in there and talk about DC or this one and then go in their house by myself. Like, nah, but hey, he's I tell people all the time, I said, I look at it like this. I said, the more y'all get upset and voice y'all opinion, you're actually promoting what he's doing. Like even people say, oh, I'm not watching that crap this weekend, you're still promoting the fight because now maybe one of your followers on social media, they're reading and tweeting like, what are you talking about? And then they go start digging into what you're saying. And now they're interested into, tuning in to see if it's crap or not. But at the end of the day, it's still a pay-per-view buy. So I say, if you really don't like it, stop talking about it because you're helping selling the product. Either if even Floyd was the best at it. Floyd said, whether you love me or hate me, just tune in. He didn't care. If you wanted to see me lose, tune in. And what did people do?
And also he's feeding an audience that just isn't tapping into it. He's feeding into that YouTube audience. It's like Ryan Garcia, same sort of thing. He's tapped into that audience. Now Ryan's a legit boxer. I'm not comparing the two, but you understand what I'm saying, that he's hitting an audience that normally wouldn't watch boxing.
Demographic, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm not mad at that. I mean, I wish that I can go dip into hundreds of millions, whatever YouTube viewers. Like at the end of the day, that's good. It's good business. I look at it, it's just business to me. I'm not taking them seriously. I'm not saying, oh, he should fight Canelo in the future. Listen, let him do his business for now. And the way it looks like, and by the way it looks at things, he's not going to be the last one to do it. And if you really look at what he's actually done, he's even brought some of our legends back into the ring, like Tyson,
Roy Jones,
and you had Tyson and Holyfield speak like. So it's a trend. It's becoming a trend now, and I look at it as simply entertainment,
Well, we had Ray Flores on last week, and he talked about it. Triller's its own thing. That's the thing I don't get, and I'm glad to hear you say what you said because I think it's no different. Like you didn't see boxers in the '90s. You didn't see Holyfield come out and say, "I hate celebrity boxing." It's essentially the same thing. This is just the 2021 version of it. So I find that interesting. That Triller's like, look, we're not trying to be like the Zone or any of these other. We're just our own thing. From that aspect, do you think that people are kind of looking at this wrong? Because it's not like they're trying to say we're better than DAZN or whatever. DAZN's its own thing, but Triller's its own thing. The commentators right told us, they're like, go drink alcohol on air. We don't care. We're trying to be different. We don't want to be the buttoned up thing or whatever,
I mean, look at it. Just look at the Oscar De La Hoya incident on the commentary. People, that was a trending topic alone on Triller. So like you pointed out, people forget, like, we came from the era of, the tough man. People forget about tough man competition. That wasn't considered as real boxing, but people were tuning in to see that. I mean, I think the first one that really, if you really look at it, the first one that really started pulling that mess off was really Butterbean. Nobody took Butterbean seriously, but people knew who he was, and then people were still tuning into his fights. They kept calling him the king of the 4-rounders, but he's, till this day, people still know who Butterbean is. So like, it's not like this is the first time we've had these type of fights, going on. And even when people today, they try to knock down women's boxing as a point, they forget. Like, I love Layla Ali and Ann Wolf and all them, but they wasn't fighting names that you know of today. They was fighting some of those women. They signed up for boxing. They were there, to do a job, and then you never really heard from them. At least today, in women's boxing, there are top quality women from the amateur program that either fought at the Olympics or fought at the highest level in the world championships of an amateur boxer, and those fights are happening. So it's all about growth. I look at it as just growth in that sport and combat sports as a whole.
And just one last thing for me before Kendrick jumps in here. You talked about being friends with Usman and training with him back in the day. Do you how frequently do you watch MMA? Do you sort of tune into the pay-per-views, or what's sort of your fandom level? I was curious about that.
I think like over the years, I've been starting to tune in more and more because like I said, it used to be one of those things where, and Kendrick knows, where boxing fans were always trying to downplay MMA at one point. They were always
majorly.
Well, like I was saying earlier, it got to one of the things where like, people keep talking about it so much. Maybe I need to start tuning in more to. Listen, I came from the era when UFC, you've had a 400-pound guy fighting a little 170.
Daniel Yarborough,
fight James. James.
Exactly.
Listen, one guy had a sumo suit on, and the other guy had a Kung Fu Kenny outfit on. So I remember all that going on. So like, I said, let me tune into, because I always been a fan of UFC. Like I mean MMA as a whole. Like I knew about the Chuck Liddells and the Tito Ortiz's and it, but lately, I've been tuning in more because it's become the norm. UFC has now become the norm, and it's like, okay, if I can't find a good boxing match, but I want to see some combat, I'll tune into what the UFC, Bellator, or whatever is playing right now.
Would you ever do a Triller fight? I know you're comfortable at top rank. They take care of you. I'm not trying to cause no controversy. I want Uncle Bob them get mad at me. But would you do a Tiafimo if it came to it for the money?
I'm still fighting my field, and I'm fighting. Okay, let's say a legitimate matchup, but I'm going to a different audience, and I'm probably making triple the amount that I normally will make. That's why I say I'm not trying to listen to no fighter out there that's saying, "Oh, I wouldn't do that." Because people listen, we live in an era where the screenshots is famous now. Because I remember like they will screenshot you saying, "Oh, this is crap," and the next day when you're put on that platform, "Oh, this is the best thing ever! I can't wait to fight." Like hold up, just a month ago you said this is. I don't really say I'm not gonna knock it. I'm not gonna knock it. It's like one of the things. Don't knock it till you try it. You know what I mean? So I'm open for anything. But if it helps, and I look at this, if it helps build boxing as a whole to a different, introducing them to a different audience and a different, on a different platform, why would you knock it?
Yeah.
And look back on how me and Jamel met. We were in for a Bud Coffee fight, Teofimo Lopez at MSG, and we're running around. I'm doing my stuff. I'm like, why is this dude with me? He's with the gym boxer. He got the Jamel Herring show. Give people some insight that don't know your personality or how you got everybody thought it was like, man, Jamel asking me questions. I'm like, he'll give me a run for my money for my job. We going in and out the bounce on MSG, and he's like falling right next to me. We've been cool ever since.
Hey, you just see me last weekend. I was on NBC Sports doing commentating. So like me, I try to dip into different things. Like even now, I got my partner, Jerry Caceres. We call him JC. We're managing fighters now, and
nice.
I do that because I want to look out for fighters so they don't have to go through some things that I maybe had to went through early in my career, or things that I've seen happen to others. Like I don't. It's not for me. It's not for like looking at the money because, as you guys see, I'm getting those big fights that I want. So for my personal, financial statement, I'm all right. But I care about other fighters so much that I want to put them in the right position. And for me, it's like this. It's like I want to put you in a position where I get your foot through the door, but it's up to you now to go from here. So meaning that I'm not here just to steal your spotlight or steal your shine. Like, no, you're in there. I got you there. Now it's up to you to put in the work to get to that next level as well. And right now I got I even have a top woman fighter who did great in amateurs. Her name is Micaiah Krebs, and she's fighting next month in 3 weeks. She's fighting in 3 weeks. Misael Lopez from Denver, Michael Gamble from Cincinnati, Matthew Rodriguez. He just flew out to Cali for training camp, for his first training camp, because he's going to turn pro soon in May as well. So I always stay busy. I'm always busy. Like, it's not like, I look at it. It's not all about me. I mean, yes, I love the Jamel Herring show and things like that, but my show has a lot of guests on there as well, and I'm just here to just look out for the next generation and just show people love and give people the same love that I was given in return.
What was it like? Sorry, go ahead.
What's something that boxing can take from MMA to make it better? Like, for instance, James knows this because he's the MMA guy. Usman and Masvidal was made because fans wanted to see it. It wasn't like Masvidal's in the top 5 or nothing like that. But we got a lot of fights that people want to see in boxing. You already know your man Bud and Earl back, my Dallas guy.
No, that's I'm glad you touched on that, because it's like this. For starters, with UFC, a guy can have 6 losses, but if the fans want that rematch, like we just seen, whatever, it happens, and it happens at the highest stage in the main event. But with boxing, when you make those risks or those big fights, you always got that. Our fighters in their mind, they always think about, well, if I lose, I might have to take 3 or 4 steps backwards. But in the UFC, it's not like that. Guys lose, and depending on how they performed, the fans always demand for him to either come back with a rematch or want to see him later on in another big fight. So not, because with boxing, once you lose, they try to bury you right there. Oh, I knew he was a hype job. I knew that. And fighters won't admit it, but that's the issue right there. And then with the UFC, it's one umbrella. With all these other fights that you point out, there's too many people involved. There's too many. Yeah, not only are you dealing with the promoters, you also got to deal with the network side, the manager stepping in, who gets what. So you got to. Boxing is just too many. There's too many pieces. As the UFC, it's a lot easier to make those fights because they're under one umbrella, and like if they lose, depending on how they look in the loss, people they'll come back again for another big fight, and maybe 3 months down the road. So and it doesn't have to wait like another 6, 8, 7 months. So like that's the difference right there.
It's a question for me. What does a manager do? Me and James go back and forth because in the MMA side, we've had people that are legitimately cool with us on personal level, like us, ask about our family and our kids. Right. And you start talking to do business. Man, anything about my manager? It's like, does this MFer work for you or do you work for this MFer? I need to know the deal.
Like I said,
I get that way in boxing too.
It's so crazy. What's the deal? It's crazy. Even me as a world champion with my fighters, I work for them. I don't pull the whole, well, I'm Jamel Herring, this is how we're going to do it. No, my job is to put you in the best position to make the most money that you could potentially earn for that type of fight, and just make sure that you're not being screwed over behind the scenes from the promoter. So that, like I said, my job is I'm cool with that because I look at that as me playing the big bro role, looking at your younger siblings. So that's how I look at. That's what a manager's supposed to do. But in this business, you got a lot of greedy managers that'll do deals behind your back when they know it's not your best interest, but it is the best interest for them. And that's not how I roll. And like I say, even when for me, it doesn't stop at boxing. I also want to get into the MMA field because you see a lot of guys who have issues with that field in terms of getting paid as well.
Well, hit me up. I'm your MMA guy for sure.
I will.
So that makes sense. Quickly before we go, what was it like meeting Kendrick for the first time? Because there's no one like Kendrick. Am I right? Like, come on. There's no one like Kendrick in a good way. Kendrick full of energy. Kendrick cool with me. I was about to say, Kendrick, we're going through this interview.
And this won't be my last. This won't be our last time speaking either. So, like I said, I'm not Kendrick. No, I'm not that world champion who was, who has to do the whole call my agent and then we'll schedule 4 months in a row. No, listen. If I'm free, like I'm home now, as y'all see, I'm cool to talk. I can talk all day with you guys.
And we appreciate.
And we got a friend of the show, James. We got a new friend of the show who just happens to be a world champ, who masquerades as a world champ.
Hey, I look like this. People are gonna remember you, who you are outside the ring when it's all said and done. That's how I look at it.
There you go. Kendrick, you want to lead him out?
Thanks for coming and see us, man. Can you give us a little shout out? We started new. Hey, you're a second champion. We had Tia Fimo on episode 2. You're a second boxing champion. We had Boo Dennis on episode 3.
And I got my man Tio before me, man. That's my boy. That's my boy, though. Y'all got a good time with him.
But can you give us a shout out? Say your name, state your organization with the belt, and let them know that they listen to Kendrick and James on the 1-2 podcast.
Hold on. Y'all playing me.
Oh, yeah, we got some hardware.
No, hey, I know Tio Fimo ain't show you love like this, though. Hey, Tio got about like 3 or 4 of these right now, but I know he ain't show you love, man. So, it's the boy is the champ. Showing, hey, Tio, showing my new friends much love and respect. You know what I mean? But I appreciate you guys, man. Like I said, this is Champ Jamel Herring, man. I had a great time speaking with you guys, man. And like I said, we gotta do it again. Hopefully, we can do it when I make my next fight announcement. But I'm here. Like, I got the number. I'm here when y'all need me, man.
Hey, you can do the belt. Be like, boom, this is Jamel Herring, WBO champion. You listen to Kendrick and James on the 1-2.
Hey. All right, this is the champ, Jamel Herring, holding the WBO super featherweight crown with my people, my boys, Kendrick and James. And y'all tune in. Y'all need to be tuning in, man. Always and forever. We going, like I said, we're gonna do it again ASAP. I appreciate you guys. I need to get that background. I like that background that James has.
I'll hook you up with some posters. You got your boy Wyman on there.
Kendrick, you're my boy, man. NSPN, y'all know. I rock with y'all.
Love it.
Appreciate it, man. We can ask for that.
There you go. Jamel Herring joining us here. That was awesome. The whole guest lineup, the whole flow today. Shout out to producer Phil for making it happen.
Shout out Phil.
Yeah, we got what, like 60 seconds left or something like that. We'll sort of wrap things up here. But
behind the scenes, working on Rumble for next week. Literally been texting with his manager lady, to get stuff done. So we have Rumble in the building, and I'm trying to trigger with somebody from 261 because it was so much smoke. We have to get the top of it, then we can get the middle of it next week.
We'll get some good guests as we always do every single week. Interesting tidbit with Anik thinking that he thinks Weidman's going to fight again. I don't, but if he must know better than we do. He's close to
he knows better than we do. Yeah, I didn't. Man, it's something like glass shattering. Like it's one of those things. Like I'm always like I wish I was there when he missed stuff like that. I wish I was not there because me and Chris have been cool when he beat Anderson, and then I saw him in between the first and second fight. I got cool with him. And like he even shout out to my family and stuff like that. We hung out in Las Vegas. I've hung out with him and Mavi at the ESPY Awards. So I know him on a personal level. He's a legitimately all-American dude. That's not just a nickname.
Yeah, and if people haven't noticed, that's why Kendrick and I do get a lot of access, because we're personable with the fighters. We're getting on their level. It's not about being the, clickbaity, whatever. There's a way to cover the sport, and I think Kendrick and I are good examples of how to do that. I don't know how much time we have left. I know we had 60 about not that long ago, but Kendrick, what do you got coming up this week? Anything interesting? I mean, you're probably
no. I'm already focused on next Monday. We're gonna make it bigger and better. I'm already focused on next Monday. I'm laying low, getting ready for Canelo. Canelo's coming to town in a week or so. So Canelo's coming to my backyard. If you haven't been to a boxing fight, this is when you don't care about boxing. Just go to a Canelo fight. It's all the closest thing you can get to a Mayweather fight. The atmosphere is electric. When that man come out and say he here for her, let's go, Mexico, Saul. They just go crazy before they even say Alvarez. It's crazy.
Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. Check me out Thursday night on the PFL Twitter account. I'll be hosting the next event. It's going to be Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be on there interviewing guests. Probably won't get to interview Wiz Khalifa like last week, but I'll probably still get some cool guests to talk to in between the fights. So join me on there if you guys are watching PFL on Thursday. And thanks for watching our show. For myself, Kendrick Johnson, and our man, Phil, the producer, I want to thank you guys for watching. And we will be back here next Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. Pacific time for the 1-2 with Kendrick and James. Thanks so much for watching.